Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Chi International was located in the most prosperous and expensive business circle of the city. It was housed in the Ziefing building, an 87-floor skyscraper. Point two. As one of the most powerful families in the city, Chi International occupied a huge space between the 50th and 60th floors. Point two. The 61st to 70th floors belonged to the richest Fu group in the city, and the top 18 floors were the two seven-star hotels that had jointly invested in the world. Point two. Su He dragged her simple suitcase along and raised her beautiful face to gaze at the Ziefing building reaching the clouds. She had been dreaming about it for 5 years. She'd thought that she would never have the courage to stand here. He must detest her, right, too? He was so proud. Her betrayal would definitely be viewed as a stain on his life. For the past 5 years, Su He hadn't dared to read any news about City A. She hadn't contacted any of her friends in City A. Other than burying herself in her studies and working hard, she did not know how else to keep herself alive. Point two. It was a heart-wrenching pain. The rushing city elites could not help but take another look at Su He. Even though they were well-informed, they still couldn't hide their admiration. Point two. Su He had a head of long, brown, wavy hair that cascaded down to her slender waist like a waterfall. She was tall, 1.7 m, and slim, but she did not lose her voluptuous sexiness. Her snow-white skin and her crystal-clear eyes seemed to be filled with thousands of words that could melt a man's heart. In short, she was very beautiful, exuding a sense of magnificence from her bones. Point two. Stretching her somewhat sore neck, Su He came to the coffee shop on the first floor, specially provided for guests to rest. She found a corner and sat down to dial a number that she knew by heart. Point two. He? Is that you? Is it really you? A scream came from the other end of the phone. Su He tried to frown, but a long-lost smile appeared on her lips. She spoke softly. It's me, I'm back, too. On the other end of the phone, Hao Yinfei sat, stunned. She didn't even notice that her phone had fallen onto the table. Point two. The pale face in her mind seemed to bloom at that moment, dazzling her. The person who had disappeared for 5 years, whom she thought she would never see again in this life. Point two. Her assistant was shocked. What could make Director Hao Yinfei, who was always calm, act so strangely, too? Sister Hao Yinfei, are you okay? The assistant respectfully handed the phone back. Point two. I'm fine. Hao Yinfei shook her head and sent the assistant out of the office. Only then did she recover from the shock. She roared into the phone. Where are you? You heartless bastard. You still have the nerve to come back? I'm going to see you now. Hao Yinfei blew through the public relations department on the 55th floor like a gust of wind, almost tripping at the elevator entrance. Fortunately, a handsome man quickly caught her. Point two. Lung Yunfeng hugged Hao Yinfei's slender waist with an awkward expression. He looked at Chi Che, who was standing in front of one of company's many executives, Fu Mengyao, and shrugged helplessly. Point two. Ever since she graduated from university, Hao Yinfei had long ago changed from her previous reckless personality. What had made her so flustered today, too? Director Hao Yinfei. A clear voice rang out faintly, like a piece of broken jade falling into ice, faintly carrying a hint of warning. Chi Che's handsome features were like the most perfect work of God. His deep, ink-black eyes, his tall, slim figure, and his mountain-like presence exuded a strong and capable air. Point two. The name Che suited him. Point two. I'm sorry, President. Hao Yinfei secretly cursed her bad luck. Today was really not her day. She'd had to make a fool of herself in front of Fu Mengyao. Point two. As the director of the public relations department, representing the company's image, she knew her behavior was an embarrassment. No wonder Chi Che, who had always been as immovable as a mountain, was unhappy. However, she was very curious as to whether Chi Che would still be unmoved if he knew the news of He's return. Too. Thinking of this, she felt a small surge of pleasure in her heart. She was even more curious about the expression on Fu Mingyao's face, who was the #1 daughter of City A.2. Fei Fei, why are you still as reckless as when you were in university. I heard from Che that you can totally stand on your own now, but it seems that he has overestimated you. Fu Mingyao held Chi Che's arm and looked at the embarrassed Hao Lianfei with a faint smile. Point two. After waving away Lung Yunfeng, Hao Lianfei straightened her back and put on her most professional smile. She casually brushed aside the hair that hung in front of her brow and radiated a threatening beauty. Point two. I'm glad at least to have made you smile so cheekily, Miss Fu. I'm just anxious to see my good friend from university, whom I haven't seen for many years. I'm a little anxious. She deliberately emphasized the word cheekily. Point two. Really? A trace of doubt appeared on Fu Mingyao's face. She was not the only one who looked puzzled. Lung Yunfeng was also confused. Since when did you have a good friend? If he remembered correctly, during her university days, Hao Lianfei had been quite isolated. Other than being on good terms with that woman, there was no one else. Point two. He is back. I'm gonna pick her up. Hao Lianfei raised a sarcastic smile. She watched Fu Mingyao's perfect expression shatter inch by inch, the shock in her eyes plain to all. Point two. Fu Mingyao tightly grabbed Chi Che's arm. Her red lips trembled slightly. Su Hehe was her nightmare. Point two. She clearly remembered what kind of taboo Su Hehe was to Chi Che. No one dared to mention a single word about her in front of him. Point two. Back then, Chi Che was crazy about Su Hehe, so much that it shocked the entire university. Point two. One was a noble young master, dignified as Lanji under the jade tree, while the other was a vixen. This combination was destined to not receive any blessings. A month before she was expected to graduate from university, Su Hehe betrayed Chi Che, running away with a mysterious wealthy businessman. Point two. Leaving the most perfect diamond bachelor behind, she followed a middle-aged man. But since she had left, why did she still have to come back? 2. Fu Mingyao had worked hard for 5 years and finally became a woman who was qualified to stand by Chi Che's side and become his fiancée. Yet, she came back. Point two. Fu Mingyao was terrified that Chi Che's handsome, expressionless face would reveal a trace of emotion. She stole a glance at Chi Che and finally confirmed that he didn't seem to have heard anything. His stance was still, and his clear and cold eyes were calm. Point two. Hao Lianfei eyed Chi Che with disappointment. She knew that he hated Hehe. However, looking at him now, Hehe probably couldn't even be bothered to notice her. Point two. If he didn't even have hatred, would there still be love? Che, my father's representative has arrived at the meeting room. Fu Mingyao finally murmured to Chi Che once she'd relaxed. Point two. Only when the couple were far away did Lung Yunfeng pat Hao Lianfei's shoulder, shake his head, and follow them. Point two. Hao Lianfei didn't understand Chi Che. Fu Mingyao had followed Chi Che for 5 years, yet she still didn't understand him. Just now, when the two words Su Hehe were mentioned, the storm in Chi Che's dark eyes was enough to flood rivers and fill oceans. Just looking at it had made Lung Yunfeng's heart skip a beat. It seemed that it wouldn't be peaceful in the future. He really didn't understand why she had to come back. Had her businessman already left her and died of old age? Su Hehe was afraid that the entire city would not welcome her. Point two. In the coffee shop, she listened to Hao Lianfei's incessant questions, answering from time to time. Point two. How are you and Lung Yunfeng? Su Hehe's sudden question stunned Hao Lianfei, and her expression, which was originally high-spirited, suddenly dimmed. Point two. Su Hehe shook her head helplessly and knew her heart had been right. Lung Yunfeng really was hard-hearted. Feifei had been loyal to him all those years ago, and he could not be moved even after 5 years. Point two. Knowing that she could not escape Su Hehe's keen intuition, Hao Lianfei decided not to hide it. She removed her usual noble and cold facade and told her friend everything about the current situation. At the end, she didn't forget to tease her a little. Point two. Back then, you only spent 3 days to settle the most talented young master of the university. I spent so many years, but was still unable to make Lung Yunfeng fall in love with me. 2. From the beginning to the end, he only treated her as a junior. She went to great lengths to come to work at the Chi group. She originally thought that she would be able to get the upper hand, but she didn't expect to be watching his girlfriends change one by 1.2. She was already tired. Soo Hee-hee's chest felt like it was being pricked by needles. Thinking back to the reasons she had wooed Ah-che back then, her heart was half sweet and half sad. Point two. Back then, their university had targeted all the influential people to form a speed dating group. The person who was the least compatible with her was Chi-che. One was fire, one was ice, one was heaven, one was earth. The difference was like the difference between the clouds and the mud. Point two. Fu Mingyao's sarcasm had infuriated her. So she recklessly ran from medical school to the business school to look for Chi-che. Point two. Ah-che, I like you, too. The sudden confession had shocked the entire lecture hall. The young professor who was lecturing stopped with a profound expression. Chi-che crossed his arms in front of his chest and waited quietly for the next part. Point two. The senior students looked at this girl with interest. To be honest, as long as a man saw her, he would not be unmoved. However, they firmly believed that Chi-che was stronger. Point two. He was the Prince Charming in everyone's hearts. Point two. A man who was as cold as ice and snow would definitely not be moved by mere beauty. A woman who was worthy of him would definitely be unique. Point two. Soo Hee-hee was beautiful, but she wasn't worthy of young Master Chi, who was admired by everyone. Point two. The slim youth who held their attentions sat straight in the corner. Even if he did not speak, his overbearing aura still made people subconsciously focus on him. Point two. A hint of interest flashed across Chi-che's bottomless eyes. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth, and the expensive pen kept spinning in his slender fingers. Everyone held their breath as they waited for his answer. The room was silent. This man was sometimes terrifyingly silent. Point two. After the incident, the overwhelming scolding almost drowned Soo Hee-hee. Although it was unpleasant to hear, there were only 3 points to sum up. First, he scolded her for being shameless. Second, he scolded her for wanting to eat swan meat like a toad. And third, he scolded her for having the face of a mistress, which was very fitting for how she had acted. Point two. Of course, this was the civilized version of the conclusion. The real version was, she was a slut. However, she didn't care. She would definitely be able to woo Chi-che. Point two. The next day, Soo Hee-hee was not discouraged at all. She kept up her efforts. The classroom Chi-che chose was packed to the brim. There were even a group of people following him on the road. There was no reason other than to watch the beautiful vixen chasing after the cold and noble young Master. Point two. On the third night, in the early hours of the morning, Soo Hee-hee was woken up by her phone ringing. The sudden sound woke the entire dormitory and made them curse her. Point two. Soo Hee-hee was startled. Seeing that it was an unfamiliar number, she hurriedly picked up the call and shouted angrily into the receiver. You'd better have something big going on, or else this lady will let you die a horrible death. 2. A man's deep and pleasant laughter came from the phone. I'm downstairs. Give me 3 minutes. 2. Chi-che. Soo Hee-hee almost bit her tongue. Point 2. The man's laughter on the phone became clearer with a hint of mockery. Didn't you call me Ah-che? I prefer that name. 2. Ah-che. What the hell? Wasn't he as cold and disdainful as an icy mountain? Why was he calling at this time of night? Could it be that he was possessed by a ghost? 2. You still have 2 minutes and 8 seconds, the man on the phone said unhurriedly. Point 2. Soo Hee-hee used the speed she had gained during military training and rushed down from the 5th floor in one breath. Unable to control her momentum, she crashed into the man's broad and firm embrace. Point 2. So impatient. A teasing voice sounded above her head. Point 2. Soo Hee-hee raised her head and looked at the handsome face that was so close in astonishment. For a moment, she felt that her brain couldn't keep up with the rhythm, and she really couldn't digest Chi-che's sudden change. Point 2. Chi-che's slender and powerful hands wrapped around Soo Hee-hee's waist. He felt the overly slender size of her hips, and his eyes darkened slightly. If she was too skinny, how could she bear a bunch of children in the future? 2. Looking at the beauty in his arms, Chi-che's lips curled up into a faint smile once again. Under the beautiful appearance, there was an innocent and kind heart. He liked it, and he had liked it for a long time. Point 2. He lifted his wrist and glanced at his watch. 1 minute and 56 seconds. Not bad. Keep it up in the future. Su Hee was pulled out of her memories by the steady sound of footsteps. Now that she thought about those 3 days so many years ago, she still found it unbelievable. Point 2. Director Hao Lianfei, the president wants you to go to his office immediately. The man who spoke was tall and straight-backed, with an expressionless face. Point 2. He was Chi Che's most mysterious personal assistant, Du Ju. He listened only to Chi Che, and the Human Resources Department didn't even have any information about him. Point 2. Hurry up and go. Your big boss wants to see you. Su Hee urged her friend on, afraid of disturbing her work. Point 2. Hao Lianfei stared at Hee with a thoughtful gaze. She suddenly realized that Hee probably didn't know that the unassuming young Master Chi was already the Chi family's business leader. He occupied the highest point of the Zifeng building and lived in the Sky Villa on the top floor all year round. Point 2. He hadn't asked about Chi Che's recent situation. Should she tell her, too? Wait for me. I'll come down as soon as possible. Hao Lianfei smiled apologetically and left quickly. Point 2. Du Ju looked at Su Hee with sharp eyes full of questions. Point 2. Su Hee felt uncomfortable with him staring at her. She raised her head and looked at him. May I ask you if there's anything else, sir? 2. Du Ju was stunned. He did not expect her to not only dare to look into his eyes, but also to speak to him so calmly. Her gaze was clear and did not show any signs of panic or subterfuge. She shouldn't be as unbearable as the rumors had said. Point 2. Hello, Miss Su. Director Hao Lian has something urgent to attend to. I feel the obligation to send Miss Su back to her residence, Du Ju said unexpectedly. Point 2. Su Hee was surprised. Fei Fei hadn't introduced him just now. Do we know each other? 2. Du Ju shook his head. Who doesn't know of Su Hee's great name? Many people know you. A slightly sharp voice sounded behind him. Point 2. Su Hee raised her head and suddenly saw the young woman who had pushed the door open and was entering. She was wearing the latest Chanel suit, accentuating her slim figure and her elegance. Her exquisite makeup and beauty made people lose focus from just a glance. Her beautiful red lips, her straight nose, her fair skin. Every part of her was a perfect work of art. Point 2. However, there was too much sharp mockery in her bright eyes at this moment. Point 2. Yin Chuqing. Su Hee blurted out, shocked. Point 2. This face had left a deep impression on Su Hee. She had been one of the 2 campus belles of the university, and her name had been mentioned together with Su Hee's since the first year. All along, the focus of everyone's discussion had been on who was the most deservingly the campus belle title. Su Hee had always felt that this kind of comparison was very boring, and she had never minded it too much. But Yin Chuqing had secretly competed with her, and after going back and forth a few times, they had become familiar with each other. Point 2. Back then, she had been an arrogant princess, thinking herself to be high and mighty. But now, her temperament had changed a lot. She was no longer as high and mighty as before, but more shrewd and powerful. Point 2. The cold smile on Yin Chuqing's lips deepened, and the eyes that looked at Su Hee pierced into her skin like steel needles. Point 2. When I heard the rumors just now, I didn't believe it. I didn't think that you would really have the courage to come back. Even worse, you chose this time when our senior is about to get married. But it's also good. In the past, you were too highly praised by him. Now, you should get a taste of failure, too. Although Yin Chuqing didn't say anything more unpleasant, every word was harsh to He. She immediately staggered, and Du Ju helped her up in time. After making sure that she was fine, he took a step back. Point 2. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Su Hee's face was pale. She bit her lower lip tightly before picking up her bag and leaving in a panic. Point 2. Yin Chuqing looked at Hee's miserable figure with indifference. A trace of pleasure rose in her heart. Then, she turned her head and stared at Du Ju. Her delicate facial features were filled with mistrust. Point 2. Special Assistant Du. 2. Doubts rose in Yin Chuqing's heart. With Du Ju's identity, he would definitely not pay attention to Su Hee. Point 2. A trace of dissatisfaction flashed in Du Ju's eyes, but soon disappeared. He smiled at Yin Chuqing. Since Manager Yin is here, there's no need to inform anyone else. The president is already waiting for everyone in conference room number 13 on the 60th floor. 2. Conference room number 13. The conference room, though, is only activated under special circumstances. Point 2. Su Hee ran out of the Zifeng building in a sorry state and stood in the crowded square. She took a deep breath to cheer herself up and tried to tell himself, Su Hee, you can definitely do it. If you can't even bear this little bit, she might as well die outside. Point 2. Hee suddenly turned her head, feeling a burning gaze chasing after her. The wind blew her long hair, and the magnificence of her gaze was so beautiful that it could not be withstood. Point 2. Miss, is there anything I can help you with? The man in the white suit asked politely with a confident smile. Point 2. There's no need. Su Hee shook her head in disappointment. She turned around and hailed a taxi to leave. Point 2. President. Lung Yunfeng stood behind Chi Che and spoke in a low voice. Everyone has been waiting for you for half an hour. Chi Che's thoughts were becoming more and more difficult to guess. Sometimes, even Yunfeng, who had been his good friend for more than 10 years, didn't know what he was thinking. Point 2. Half an hour ago, Chi Che had urgently summoned a number of senior executives to the 13th meeting room to meet him. However, for the first time, he was in his own private elevator on the first floor, staring at the square outside its glass walls without moving. He looked like a sculpture that had been there since ancient times. Point 2. Lung Yunfeng thought of how Lianfei had mentioned Su Hee just now and nodded in understanding. Point 2. Chi Che's figure was tall and slender in his black suit. He turned around, expressionless, and selected number 60 from the floor buttons. Point 2. You left. Why did you come back? His voice was ice-cold with a faint hatred. Point 2. Lung Yunfeng awkwardly curled the corners of his lips with disapproval. Maybe that rich American businessman abandoned her because he was tired of her. There was a hint of schadenfreude in his tone. Point 2. The temperature in the elevator seemed to have suddenly dropped to 0. Chi Che's handsome face was as deep as water. The elevator door opened, and Chi Che stepped out of the elevator before coming back again. He pressed the button for the first floor again and patted Lung Yunfeng's shoulder. His ink-black eyes became even darker. Chris is on his annual leave. You can fly to Switzerland tomorrow and invite him back, too. The specially emphasized invite made Lung Yunfeng despair internally. Young Master Chi, can I not go? It would be strange if Chris, that pervert, would come back willingly. Unless he used his trump card of kidnapping. Point 2. It's settled then, too. President, my ex-girlfriend is in Switzerland. Can I not go, too? Your ex-girlfriend is everywhere in the world. The elevator door opened, and Chi Che quickly walked out. Point 2. Lung Yunfeng called out desperately. President, where are you going? Everyone is waiting for you, too. Then let them continue waiting, Chi Che stated simply. Point 2. The taxi drove through the bustling city and arrived at the wealthy area in the north of the city. It was also a famous tourist attraction, the bank of the Sunset Lake. Point 2. Under the setting sun, the vast lake was sparkling and beautiful. The surrounding National Forest Park, which occupied nearly 1 million square meters, was lush and verdant. Many unique and gorgeous villas were scattered in the forest park. Pavilions on both sides of the winding road, waterside pavilions, and fresh flowers were all pleasing to the eye. Point 2. Because of the Sunset Lake, the entire city had gained a lot of spiritual energy. Point 2. After the 70th stop will be fine, Su Hee instructed the driver as she gazed out of the window. Point 2. The driver looked at her enviously. Those who could live here were all from influential and wealthy families, increasing in prominence as they went deeper into the district. The villas after the 40th could already be considered manors, but he hadn't expected her to live in the 70th. Point 2. The taxi passed many villas of varying styles and came to a pure white Baroque-style villa, stopping in front of the main door. Densely blooming roses swayed gracefully on the wall, and a gentle breeze blew the fragrance of the flowers into one's heart and mind. Point 2. After paying, Su Hee told the driver to wait for her a while. She would come out again soon, and there was no way to get another taxi in the luxurious villa area. Point 2. She walked to the front door and rang the doorbell. Soon, the door slowly opened. The middle-aged housekeeper had her hair combed into a meticulous bun and brought a young male bodyguard with her to give a standard bow. She always had a placid smile on her face. "Welcome, Miss Sue, too." Sue Hee's cherry lips curved slightly. She looked at the housekeeper with a smile that was not a smile. "How have you been, Housekeeper Bai, too?" Housekeeper Bai lowered her head and averted her gaze, just in time to hide the astonishment in her eyes. She spoke softly. "I've asked for Miss Sue's return. 5 years ago, she had clearly left with such intense hatred, but now she could actually conceal it so well. At least, she was smarter than 5 years ago. She had learned to endure. Point two. Mr. Fu has been waiting for you for a long time. Two. Su Hee frowned slightly as deep disgust flashed across her eyes. She had too many bad memories of what happened here back then. Point two. Not too far away, in the driver's seat of a black Bugatti Veyron, the stern man's ink-black eyes were unreadable as he watched Su Hee disappear beyond the main door of Villa number 70.2. Chi-Che impatiently lit a cigarette and took a deep puff. As time slowly passed, more and more cigarette butts accumulated outside the car window. It was only when the sky was dark that Su Hee finally walked out of the main door with heavy steps. Point two. Her movements were stiff and her expression was drawn. Point two. Chi-Che's vital parts were ruthlessly stabbed by her appearance. His eyes were scarlet red as he stepped on the accelerator. The sports car with superior performance sped past like lightning, bringing with it a series of rumbling sounds. "Su Hee, you're good. You're ruthless. You're really ruthless, too." The twilight was dark, and the lights in conference room number 13 were bright. The many executives waited for a few hours, but no one complained. The heavy doors suddenly opened, and everyone's spirits were lifted. Chi-Che walked in with steady steps. The whispers immediately disappeared, and the huge space was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping on the ground could be heard. His sharp eyes swept over everyone present and finally landed on Yen Shu-Ching. Her sword-like eyebrows were slightly raised. Point two. After sitting in the leader's seat, Chi-Che's right hand tapped on the conference table rhythmically, and his voice was surprisingly deep and pleasant. Those who knew him knew that this was a sign that he was in an extremely bad mood. Lung Yinfeng, Hao Lianfei, and the others looked at each other and saw a hint of surprise in each other's eyes. The 20th of this month is Meng Yao's birthday. The Public Relations Department and the General Affairs Department are in charge, and the hotel and catering company under the group is assisting. I'll give you 10 days to prepare. Make sure it's grand, yet warm, too. The cello-like voice was low and pleasant to the ear, but every word was sharp and struck everyone's heart. Everyone present looked surprised and had different expressions. Since when did the CEO dote on a woman like this? It was truly unexpected. Point two. Some people suspected that Lady Fu had guarded the CEO for 5 years and finally turned the hard, refined steel into soft fingers. It seemed that the title of Madame Qi belonged solely to Lady Fu. Point two. Yen Shu-Ching held the folder in her hand tightly and looked at Chi-Che with eyes that were close to crying. Last year, he had specially celebrated her birthday, and the only birthday he had celebrated was hers. It had attracted boundless envy, jealousy, and hatred. This year, he had the entire company celebrate Fu Mengyao birthday. Was she ultimately no match for Fu Mengyao? No, the only thing that Fu Mengyao was better at was having a rich father. Point two. After the meeting ended, Hao Lianfei and the elites from the Public Relations Department worked overtime until 9 o'clock. Only then did they preliminarily confirm the plans for the birthday party. They roughly listed out the names of the people who would be invited, but they needed Chi-Che to personally confirm the details. Point two. However, Chi-Che's request had completely stumped Hao Lianfei. She understood the grand gesture, but what did warmth mean? Since when did young Master Qi understand warmth? This didn't make sense, too. After racking her brain for a long time, Hao Lianfei could only dial Lung Yunfeng's number, hoping that a good friend of his would be able to comprehend the holy will. Point two. You've known him for so many years. Have you ever seen him being warm to anyone? His warmth might come from Mars, and we Earthlings just can't understand it. Lung Yunfeng complained. Point two. Who says he hasn't been warm to anyone? Hao Lianfei couldn't help but retort. He used to dote on he, too. Every time he made trouble, Chi would look helpless and secretly break the hearts of the dorm's infatuated girls. They were all obsessed with him. Otherwise, why would Yin Chuqin covet Chi for so many years? 2. Don't mention Su He to me. She doesn't have the right to be mentioned in the same breath as Chi. Don't mention her in front of him in the future. He didn't want to think of such a heartless woman, and he didn't want to see Chi suffering so much for her that he was about to die. Point 2. How can you know the joy of a fish if you're not a fish? I'm warning you, Lung Yinfeng. You don't have the right to criticize he like this. If you don't believe me, let's make a bet. Do you think Chi thinks the same as you, too? In the past 2 years, perhaps she had slowly given up on Lung Yinfeng. Hao Yinfei couldn't be bothered to show her obedient and gentle side in front of him. Right now, she wanted nothing more than to smash her phone into his face. This man was too conceited. It was clear that he had never known what love was. Point 2. Lung Yinfeng was stunned by her aggressive scolding. When had Fei ever treated him so badly? It must have been because of Su He. He could not help but feel even more disgusted with Su He. Point 2. Lung Yinfeng took a long time to react. He finally spoke, slowly and coldly. Che's deep feelings only belonged to Meng Yao now. 2. The conversation had ended on bad terms. But not only did Hao Yinfei get rid of her sadness from before, she felt extremely carefree. Let that stallion, Lung Yinfeng, die too. Opening the list of invitations, Hao Yinfei picked up the pen and added Su He to the end before calling her secretary over. Point 2. Director, what are your orders? 2. Hao Yinfei stood and handed the list to the secretary. Send the invitations according to the list at the first possible opportunity tomorrow morning, she said solemnly. Make sure it's done well, too. The secretary took the invitations list with a hesitant look. But doesn't this have to be shown to the president and Miss Fu? This was the president's private matter. How could the director, who had always been smart, be so confused? 2. Just do as I say. 2. Night fell. In the Sky Villa, on the top floor of the Zifeng building, Fu Mingyao walked slowly. She stepped on the soft and expensive carpet with her bare feet, lazily and elegantly like a noble Persian cat. Point 2. This was Chi's usual place, and Fu Mingyao was the only woman who was permitted to enter. Point 2. The Sky Villa was decorated luxuriously and elegantly. It was surrounded by a glass wall, and because it was above everything, it looked like it was suspended in the air from afar. In clear weather, it attracted the attention of the world, and in the drizzling rain, it seemed like a dream and a fairyland. Point 2. This was a landmark building of the city, signaling a supreme and noble identity. Even the richest man in the city, Fu Jianxing, did not arrogantly claim this place as his own. Point 2. Chi, who had been the head of the Qi family for less than 5 years, used his sharp and overbearing methods to turn this place into his property. Point 2. Chi stood alone in front of the glass wall, his posture tall and straight, unmoving as an old tree. Point 2. Fu Mingyao spoke softly from behind him. Che, you've been standing there for almost an hour. 2. He'd been like this since she arrived. For the first time, he hadn't noticed her coming in. She thought that Che would take the initiative to greet her coming in. After waiting for an hour, she understood that if she didn't take the initiative, Che might never do so. Point 2. Since that was the case, so long as she could get Che's love, so what if she kept making the first move, too? Che turned around. His handsome face was hidden in the darkness, and his expression couldn't be seen clearly. Did you like the birthday present I gave you? His voice was so low that it almost faded into the night. Point 2. Yes. Fu Mingyao nodded repeatedly, deliberately ignoring the panic in her heart. And not just the present. I'm even happier because this is the first time you've spent so much effort on my birthday. Can you invite Lung Fei on the day of the banquet, too? Are you sure? Chi asked thoughtfully, his entire body exuding a noble and cold temperament. Point 2. Fu Mingyao felt even more uneasy in her heart. A trace of viciousness flashed through her eyes, but she was very good at concealing it. She lowered her head and faintly said, You can't bear to admit it? That's right. No matter what, Miss Lung is an Asian diva. You're the one who made her famous. Her status as a dazzling star is extraordinary, too. Recently, Lung Feifei had become more and more arrogant. She had completely forgotten that she was just a smiling face. She had to remind her how to behave. Point 2. Are you jealous? Chi-Che's lips curled into a smile, devilish and willful. Point 2. No way, too. What qualifications does she have to compare with the city's #1 daughter? I only made her famous because I thought highly of her potential. Chi-Che shrugged indifferently, cold and emotionless. But she's in Milan. She won't be coming back for the time being, too. Che. Fu Mingyao used her soft voice to hide the disappointment in her heart. She understood that Chi-Che didn't like to mention the same thing twice, so she cleverly chose to change the topic. Point 2. I'm so happy to have you, too. Chi-Che's thin lips curled into a smile. You'll be even happier in the future, too. Che, I love you. I love you very much. After receiving his promise for the first time, Fu Mingyao was so happy that she cried. Point 2. Suhi was woken up by a phone call in the middle of the night. She picked up the phone in a daze and whispered affectionately, "Ah, Che, stop fooling around. I'm so sleepy, too." In the past, she would receive a call from Ah Che every late winter night. At first, he would say that he wanted to check if she was being honest. Then, when she was about to fall asleep from waiting, he would use a low and sweet voice to say, "I miss you, too." Even if she hated to be disturbed in her sleep, she would still pick up the phone happily. Every night, before she went to sleep, she would hope that Ah Che would call. Point 2. The person on the other end of the call fell into a long silence. Even the surrounding noises quieted down. Point 2. Suhihi was suddenly completely awake. She patted her head in pain and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Fei. The only person in the city with her number was Fei. Ache would not call her again. Point 2. At this moment, her heart ached so much that it felt as though someone had used a knife to gouge out a piece of it. It was dripping with blood. Point 2. For some reason, he didn't have the energy to hide her intimacy and dependence just now. It made Hao Lianfei's heart ache. At the same time, she was even more certain that he was not heartless towards Chi-Che. Point 2. Don't say sorry to me. If you want to treat me like a good sister, just don't disappear again. 2. Suhihi was silent for a moment. She seemed to think seriously for a moment before speaking solemnly. I won't do it again in the future. 2. Good. How does that off work? Do you want to come out for a drink? Which hotel are you staying at? I'll pick you up, too. No need. I'm staying in a temporary rented apartment. It's too late. Call me when you're free. Suhihi yawned, her eyelids heavy as 1,000 gold coins. Point 2. Her physical condition had been worsening over the past year. She wouldn't have come back so recklessly otherwise. Point 2. She'd found the apartment that she was renting through the internet before she'd returned to China. Although the 1 bedroom and 1 living room weren't big, the decoration was very warm and comfortable. After wandering around for 5 years, it gave her the feeling of home that she had always longed for. Point 2. Moreover, it was convenient to travel to from the hospital. Point 2. When she was certain that she was going to return to China, her American mentor had recommended the best cardiothoracic surgery hospital in the city, the first hospital affiliated to the University of a Medical College. Unfortunately, there were too many of her former classmates and alumni there. She was not prepared to face them, so she had dragged her feet and never went to register. Point 2. In the coffee shop, Hao Lianfei couldn't help but complain to Su Hihi, who was late again. Hihi, you're busier than I am, and I'm the director of the public relations department. Is it really so difficult to see you, too? Stop teasing me. I'm unemployed. I'll have to rely on you to provide for me in the future. Her appearance had immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding people. Point 2. There's absolutely no problem with that, but you can't steal my limelight, Hao Lianfei said sourly. As long as you're there, everyone else can only act as your foil. 2. Su Hihi laughed and shook her head. Fu Mengyao and Yin Chuqing won't. 2. Hao Lianfei curled her lip in disdain, and her image as a capable and refined director immediately vanished. One has the halo of the richest daughter, and one is known as the #1 beauty with both charm and talent. After saying that, she didn't forget to point at Hihi, feeling disappointed. You're the only one who's disappointing. You don't participate in clubs or events, and you don't even know how to dance at dances. You're really letting down your beautiful face, too. Suhihi was embarrassed by her scolding. She hadn't known what a big mistake she had made. Point two. I was wrong, all right? You still remember what happened so long ago. Two. If you know you're wrong, then you have to change. You have to attend the banquet tomorrow. Two. What banquet? He was confused. Point two. Lian Fei had known that her secretary was unreliable. It's a gathering of old classmates. Since you're back, you can't hide and not see anyone all the time. All right, too. All right, too. When the night arrived, Su Hee was wearing a blue knee-length dress. Her long waves of curly hair were casually tied back, and she was charming and elegant. Even though she was facing the sky, it was hard to hide her beauty. Point two. When the taxi stopped in front of the private clubhouse, the doorman immediately gave them a disdainful look. Point two. Su Hee got out of the taxi and looked around. All the cars in the parking lot were luxurious, high-class vehicles. Point two. The people coming and going were all rich and famous people. Such an old taxi really didn't fit in. No wonder the driver had looked awkward when she gave the address at the beginning of the ride. Point two. I'm sorry, Mississippi. Are you a member? With a professional smile, the doorman blocked Su Hee at the entrance, attracting the disdainful eyes of the rich and famous women coming and going. Point two. Member? Fei Fei hadn't mentioned anything about being a member. Quickly, he dialed Hao Lianfei's cell phone and received a message inviting her to leave a voicemail. Point two. This is a private club. Mississippi non-members aren't allowed to enter. The doorman's expression, originally polite, had turned to disdain. You can't stay here. Please leave immediately. 2. But I'm here to attend the class reunion. Why don't you make an exception? 2. Class reunion? The doorman sneered in disbelief. Miss, you're not drunk, are you? You're here to attend a class reunion? Tonight, the club has already been booked by the president of the Chi Corporation to hold a birthday party for his fiancée. Why would there be a class reunion? 2. Why don't you help me check? I can't have gotten it wrong. It wasn't April Fool's Day today, and Fei Fei wouldn't be so cruel. There must be some mistake. Point 2. There's no class reunion. If you don't leave now, we'll have to call security, too. You're wrong, Mississippi. There isn't a class reunion, but it is indeed a birthday of a classmate, a teasing voice intoned. Yin Chuqing walked over gracefully in her high heels. Point 2. Su He had a bad premonition. Maybe she really had been deceived by Fei Fei. Hello, Miss Yin. The banquet has already started. Please come in. The doorman immediately put on a very respectful smile. This club was the Qi Group's property. As an executive of the Qi Group, many people knew Yin Chuqing. Point 2. Yin Chuqing put on a faintly discernible sneer. She said to the doorman condescendingly, "You're really blind tonight. This Miss Su is our CEO's ex-girlfriend. Tonight is the CEO's fiancé's birthday. If she doesn't attend, wouldn't it be a waste of a good show, too?" She couldn't wait for Su He to act. She was looking forward to Fu Mingyao's wonderful expression. Point 2. Che had a fiancé. It was Fu Mingyao, of course. Although she had expected this outcome, she was still so uncomfortable that she could barely breathe. Point 2. She was too selfish. On one hand, she hoped that Che could be happy, but on the other, she had been delusional to think that he was still single. Che was so outstanding. If she was his partner, she wouldn't let him go. She should have seen it clearly long ago. Point 2. He clenched his right hand tightly, her nails digging deep in her palm. The pain was intense, but she still maintained a faint smile on her face. Point 2. Maybe she was weak, but at least she could hide it in front of Yin Chuqing. Point 2. The doorman was frightened by Yin Chuqing's words, and her face turned pale. Cold sweat soaked her back, and she looked at Su He in fear. Point 2. Although she was an ex-girlfriend, she was still the ex-girlfriend of the president. It wouldn't be good to offend her, right? Since it's not a class reunion, I'd better leave. At this time, the only thing He thought of was to escape. She had dreamed countless times of being able to reunite with Che one day, but she shrank back when it was right in front of her eyes. Point 2. She was afraid that she would not be able to control herself and cry. She was even more afraid that she would throw herself into Che's arms. She was most afraid of Che's cold eyes. Point 2. Yin Chu-ching sneered. What's the difference between a class reunion and a birthday party? Since you're here, then you may as well stay. 2. She pulled Su He into the club without giving her any time to object. Old classmate, we haven't seen each other for many years. You must have fun, too. Yin Chuching's grip on He's wrist was extremely strong. No matter how hard she struggled, she could not loosen her grip at all. Her sharp nails dug into He's skin, and it hurt even more. Point 2. The melodious music was getting closer and closer. He felt that every step she took felt like a year. The two exquisite carved doors were pulled open by the waiters at the same time. A dazzling light shone on the two of them in an instant, and He subconsciously turned her face away. Point 2. The entire hall instantly fell silent. Everyone had a tacit understanding, as if they had rehearsed it countless times in advance. The socialites and influential people who were chatting and laughing looked at the entrance in surprise before turning their curious gazes towards the stairway. Point 2. Many of the business elites from their university had a deep memory of what had happened back then. Everyone knew the legendary university bell. Point 2. However, they were not as shrewd and scheming as the celebrities and dignitaries. They could not help but whisper to each other, "Oh my God, it's Su He? Didn't she leave with a middle-aged, wealthy businessman? 2. Why did she come back? 2. The woman is shameless. 2. At this moment, Che was dressed in a suave white suit. His posture was tall and slender, and he stood at the stairs on the second floor, planted like a tree. His handsome face still held a gentle but indifferent expression. His ink-black eyes were calm, revealing his strength and confidence. Point 2. Fu Mingyao was dressed in a high-class, custom-made white gown, fully displaying her elegance. Around her beautiful neck, she wore a ruby necklace that Chris had personally made. Point 2. The two of them stood together like a pair of lovers. They were a match made in heaven. Point 2. At this moment, Fu Mingyao was supposed to be the center of attention, a dazzling sight. However, Su He's appearance had stolen the spotlight. Point 2. She looked deeply at Su He, and her original anger suddenly vanished. Her old wish had come true. So how could Su He think that she was qualified to still stand by Che's side? How could she still have the charm of the legendary school belle from back then? He had become a clown. Point 2. The smile on Fu Mingyao's red lips deepened. After not seeing her for 5 years, she had become even more miserable. She couldn't be bothered to take another look at her. With Che's pride, how could he still love her? 2. She wasn't even qualified to be Fu Mingyao's opponent. Point 2. He turned her head, but felt a burning gaze that made her skin prickle. She turned and fell straight into Che's deep black eyes. Point 2. The two of them looked at each other. He could no longer hear the mocking voices around her. She stared only at Che, lost in infatuation. Her eyes were filled with boundless joy, desire, and anticipation. Point 2. She wanted nothing more than to immediately leap into Che's warm embrace. Point 2. Che's sword-like brows furrowed tightly. Su He's emotions were plain as daylight to him. It was clear from single glance. Point 2. He could see Su He's thoughts written across her face, but it brought him no joy. Instead, it made his heart throb with pain. Point 2. He was no longer the youth from back then. Why did she have to look as delicate and pitiful as she had years ago? 2. Fu Mingyao held on to Che's arm and walked calmly to Su He. Her smile was gentle and generous, and she deliberately pouted. "Che, an old classmate who I haven't seen for many years is here. Won't you welcome her?" She was still worried and wanted to test Che's reaction. She wanted to see if it was real or fake heartlessness. Point 2. "Miss Su, long time no see. Thank you for taking the time to come to my fiancé's birthday party." Che's voice was low and sweet, as if he was talking to an ordinary stranger. His tone was extremely polite as he added, "Later, in a private room on the 3rd floor, all the old classmates will sing together. Miss Su must attend." 2. Su He's body shuddered. If it wasn't for Yin Chuching secretly supporting her, she would have already fallen to the ground. Point 2. She raised her head. Her face was frighteningly pale, and her cherry lips were as red as blood. Point 2. Looking at Chi-Che's perfect sculpture-like face up close, she did not feel a trace of joy that the person she'd missed day and night was right in front of her. There was only bitterness and heartache. Point two. Su Hee suppressed the slight trembling of her body due to the pain and pulled out a smile that was uglier than crying. She replied in a low voice, "Thank you, Mr. Chi too." Everyone had even moving forward while she was gone. She was the only one who had remained where she was. Even Fei Fei, who was infatuated with Lung Yinfeng, had given up. How would Ache still remember her, too? Was she so heartless that she couldn't even be bothered to say his name? Chi-Che clenched his fists tightly and slowly loosened them, then pulled Fu Mengyao away. He walked past his acquaintances and greeted them casually. Point two. Everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It was fine too. The atmosphere in the hall returned to normal. A few familiar people raised their cups and chatted cheerfully. From time to time, they talked about current affairs and politics, as well as various cooperation plans. The beautiful waitresses held their trays and nimbly fluttered through the hall like butterflies. The handsome men and beautiful women waltzed on the dance floor. Point two. Chi-Che conversed in a low voice with an old man in a corner. He smiled and spoke in a carefree manner. His entire body exuded a powerful confidence that said everything was under control. From time to time, his sharp gaze swept across the hall. When he realized that the woman who had been standing there in a daze had disappeared, his brows unconsciously furrowed. Point two. President Xi, have you fully considered Mr. Fu's suggestion? The old man appeared dissatisfied with Chi-Che's distraction. Point two. I will consider it. Chi-Che responded casually, before taking out his phone and walking to one side to make a call. Point two. A middle-aged man beside the old man glared at him. So young and frivolous. You don't know what's good for you. Fu Juanxing practically gave away the entire Fu clan, yet you still have to take time to consider such a small request. You're really too arrogant. 2. Young Master Qi was able to develop the Qi clan to its current status in a short 5 years. You can't afford to look down on him. The old man clasped his hands behind his back and shook his head in disappointment at the middle-aged one. How could such a short-sighted person be his successor? He furtively glanced at Chi-Che, who was still on the phone. He was steady, strong, and confident. Point two. Su Hee walked to the corner helplessly. The hostility of the crowd had made her feel particularly uncomfortable. Under the blurred light, a pair of bright eyes unconsciously followed the woman who stood out like a crane among chickens. Point two. Please don't covet other people's men. A graceful figure blocked her line of sight. Point two. Fu Mingyao took Su Hee by the arm and pulled her by the arm before she could refuse. Follow me too. Behind the clubhouse, there was an elegant back garden. It was already early autumn, and the lotus flowers in the pond were gradually withering. A gust of night wind blew, and Su Hee unconsciously hugged herself. The desolation in her heart was like the withering of the lotus flowers. Point two. When she reached a hanging rattan chair, Fu Mingyao suddenly stopped and turned around. Su Hee, I don't welcome you very much, she stated, without blinking. Point two. I know. When she had left, she had sworn that she would never again appear in front of Ache. She hadn't done it, no matter how much she had greedily wanted to see him. Point two. You don't know. I don't welcome you, but it doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. The corners of Fu Mingyao's mouth curled up into a sneer. I'm Fu Juanxing's daughter, the daughter of the richest man in the city. Your mother became my father's mistress, and you still want to be my husband's mistress? Like mother, like daughter. 2. Su Hee's breathing stopped. She raised his sparkling eyes and glared at Fu Mingyao. Apologize to me, too. Looking into Fu Mingyao's disdainful gaze, Su Hee eventually turned her head in defeat. In an instant, she was like a deflated balloon. Point two. Fu Mingyao was just a rich young lady who was held in the palm of her hand. She didn't know anything and was filled with resentment. She didn't understand that her mother had never wanted to stay by Fu Juanxing's side. Point two. What was the use of her apology? Could it change the fact that her mother had been trapped for 20 years? 2. The stern warning from Fu Juanxing rang in her mind. Su Hee turned around. I won't affect your status. Someone won't allow it. Cherish Ache well. 2. You don't have to worry about it. After getting the answer she wanted, Fu Mingyao turned around and left. With her noble status, it would be an insult for her to say one more word to Su Hehe. Point 2. After seeing Fu Mingyao's figure disappear, Su Hehe sank onto the rattan chair. She covered her face in pain and wailed. Chi Che, who had been heading around the corner towards her, trembled and stopped in his tracks. Point 2. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he had unknowingly walked behind Su Hehe. Chi Che felt that he had never hated her so much. Su Hehe was the woman who had once trampled his heart under her feet. Why should he bother? 2. Chi Ching had once said that he had made his heart a prison so that others could not enter and he could not leave. The person who held the key was called Su Hehe. He had never taken it seriously. Point 2. Looking down at the weak, slender girl in front of him, Chi Che felt that he couldn't bear to watch for even a second. If he continued watching, he did not know what kind of crazy actions he would take. Point 2. His tall figure carried loneliness and desolation the moment he turned around. Point 2. Ache. Su Hehe's voice sounded behind him with a slight tremble. Point 2. Chi Che's body froze, but he didn't turn around. Ache, can I hug you? 2. Her trembling voice was filled with begging, and the bitter smile on Chi Che's lips deepened. Point 2. Since when did she need his permission to hug him? Hadn't she always thrown herself recklessly into his embrace? 2. Chi Che, give up. There's no need. Chi Che left without turning his head, his ice-cold voice pushing him 1,000 miles away. Point 2. Yin Chuqing's face was deathly pale as she stood on the opposite side of the pond, her tender eyes staring at Chi Che with infatuation. She watched him arrive at the entrance of the banquet hall once again, instantly transforming back into his usual high-spirited, domineering, and confident self. Point 2. So it turned out that his indifference was only because of Su Hehe. Sighing deeply, Yin Chuqing shook her head in despair. She felt sorry for herself and for Fu Mingyao's pride. Point 2. Although she couldn't get Chi Che, so what if Fu Mingyao got him? The person who married him would never be able to have his heart. In fact, she was even self-satisfied. Point 2. Chi Che's true heart was only used once, and it was all for this detestable woman, Su Hehe. She didn't want to allow her sadness to spread on such an occasion. So Su Hehe stood up, wiped the tears from her face, and forced herself to be alert. She turned around and happened to meet Yin Chuqing face to face. The distance between the two was less than 20 centimeters. Point 2. Yin Chuqing was holding a goblet and sizing her up with ill intentions. Su Hehe forced the corners of her mouth to move, but he couldn't smile no matter how hard he tried. Senior sister Chuqing. 2. Yin Chuqing's sneer deepened. That's right. How could she have forgotten that she was Su Hehe's senior sister? She knew Chi Che before Su Hehe. If it wasn't for her status and her insistence on pestering him despite it, perhaps the situation wouldn't be like this now. Point 2. Being thick-skinned and shameless was indeed a virtue at times. Use my name. She really didn't want to hear the words senior sister. Point 2. Chuqing. Su Hehe nodded. Although Yin Chuqing had never liked her, she had come into contact with her a lot because of Ache, so they were very familiar with each other. Point 2. Do you know that I hate you? 2. Su Hehe nodded subconsciously. She had always known. Point 2. Hehe. A broken laugh overflowed, and Yin Chuqing's expression was cold with traces of resentment. Point 2. I used to love and hate you, but now I hate and hate you. If I loved you, why didn't I cherish you properly? The proud Yin Chuqing could not ask such a spineless question. She collected her emotions and looked at Su Hehe with a sharp gaze. Point 2. Su Hehe, don't come here again. Here every grass and tree, even the air, does not welcome you. 2. In the end, Su Hehe didn't know how she walked out of the clubhouse. Her clothes and hair were still beautiful, but they had nothing to do with how she felt. She was like a lonely soul wandering in the city, with no place to settle down. Point 2. Fu Mingyao's disdain and Yin Chuqing's needle-like words didn't hurt her. Not really. What really hurt her was Che's eyes. Point 2. So cold. Che 2. Che 2. Su Hehe spoke his name in her heart countless times, but it wasn't enough. Point 2. Hao Yinfei ran across the road to Su Hehe before hugging her tightly. She was followed by her dumbstruck secretary. Point 2. Hehe, don't be sad. Let's go home. Let's go home now. 2. Ever since that night, Hao Yinfei had been staying at Su Hehe's place. She didn't even go into the company anymore. She had called in sick, which made Su Hehe not know whether to laugh or cry. Point 2. Fei, I'm really fine, Su Hehe explained patiently. Point 2. Hao Yinfei was wearing a sloppy robe and a nightgown. Her long hair was tied up messily, and she was eating half a watermelon. When she heard Su Hehe, she put down the spoon in her hand and spoke seriously. Nonsense. You looked like you were going to die that night, too. Su Hehe didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm not going to die that easily. If I were going to die, I would have died a long time ago. I wouldn't have waited until now. Such a painful day had passed, and she wouldn't give up so easily. Point 2. Hao Yinfei curled her lips disapprovingly with an obviously unbelieving expression. Even if that's the case, what if you disappear again, too? A trace of guilt rose in Su Hehe's heart. She had made a decision to leave back then, so she shouldn't have not bid farewell to Fei. Point 2. I won't, Fei. Su Hehe held Hao Yinfei's hand tightly and looked into her eyes with sincerity. Fei, I won't leave this time. If a day comes when I'm not here, it means that I'm already dead. 2. Hearing this, sparkling tears rolled down Hao Yinfei's cheeks. Why are you so stupid? Do you know, every time I see Chi holding Fu Mingyao in his arms, I want to give him a tight slap. What I hate the most is that Lung Fei's style is even lower. She actually dares to pester Chi. I'll teach her a lesson sooner or later. I'm sorry, Hehe, I'm so useless. I didn't help you keep an eye on Chi. That womanizer. After you left, he actually went around provoking women. 2. Hao Yinfei chattered nonstop while crying. She completely vented out the worry Hehe had been feeling since she left. Point 2. This was the first time Su Hehe had truly laughed in so many days. She was laughing from the bottom of her heart. So what if the whole world had abandoned her? At least she still had Fei. This was the first girl who had become friends with her in the orphanage. Point 2. The cute girl in her memories had been wearing a puffy white dress. She had spoken arrogantly with a straight face. Hey, I'm the eldest daughter of the Hao Lin family. As long as you're willing to be my good friend, I can adopt you. 2. In the end, the adoption hadn't succeeded due to her rumored identity as an illegitimate daughter, which was rejected by the Hao Lin family. Such an identity was not worthy of being called an adopted daughter of the Hao Lin family. Point 2. Ever since Miss Fu's birthday party, the entire Qi Group headquarters had been under pressure. The executives were even more miserable, and the huge workload was endless. Point 2. In their conversations, the various department managers could not help but complain that the director of the public relations department was really cunning. More than 10 corporate elites sat upright in the luxurious conference room. The huge glass wall beside them overlooked half of the city. Point 2. Conference room number 7, which had an excellent view and environment, was exclusively used by the International Financial Investment Company under the Qi Group. It was also the place where Chi's rise to power had occurred. Point 2. Those present were all his old subordinates. Some had even been recruited into the group by him. Point 2. Lung Yunfeng held the proposal in his hand and glanced suspiciously at the expressionless Chi. He lowered his head to read it through again, and the doubt in his heart deepened. Point 2. If he remembered correctly, this proposal had been prepared by Chi 5 years ago. He was prepared to give it to Su Hehe as a present for her 20th birthday. Back then, Yunfeng had even participated in the discussion. Later on, when Su Hehe betrayed Chi, the proposal had already been torn up by him personally. Since when had Chi quietly rewritten it? And why was it exactly the same? 2. Did he miss out on any good shows during his absence? Or else, was Chi's brain damaged, which was causing him to make decisions that clearly did not conform to the company's plans? 2. Why are you dawdling? Chi had already lost his patience because of Lung Yunfeng's expression. He knew what he was doing and didn't need him to constantly remind him with his eyes. Point 2. All right. Lung Yunfeng answered with a shrug and placed the business proposal on the projector. Point 2. It looked like Chi-Che's brain was not damaged, but someone's brain was about to be point two. The words displayed on the tall screen made everyone gasp. Only Chi-Che remained unmoved, his arms crossed over his chest. His ink-black eyes were calm and profound, as if they could swallow everything. It was shocking point two. This does not conform to the company's overall development plan. 2. The overall profit period is too long. 2. How long will it take to complete? 2. Chi-Che's words instantly made the manager of the international financial investment company feel that his future was bleak. God, send someone to eliminate this devil. Chi-Che? The others present could not bear to look at his expression. It was truly worse than death. The brilliant golden hopes of the VCs were destined to be destroyed by Chi-Che's hands. They had no hope of persuading him. Point two. 3. 3 months. 2. That's too long. I'll give you a month to do the actual operation, no matter the cost. 2. No matter the cost. Manager Chin suddenly felt as if a dark cloud was hanging over him. The notes flew away in front of him, and he even sneered at him as they flew. Point two. Coming out of the meeting room, Chi-Che walked with relaxed steps. The rest of the people were all dejected, attracting Du Ju's surprised gaze. Point two. President, what's going on? Du Ju couldn't help but ask after arriving at the office. Point two. Reaching out to open the folder on the desk, Chi-Che answered without raising his head. You deserve a slap. 2. You deserve a slap? What had he done to warrant such a sharp reprimand? Ask Chris to come and see me. He lowered his head and stared at the folder in his hand. Chi-Che's expression became darker and darker, and even his voice became colder. Point two. Okay. It looked like Chris was next. Point two. That's it. Chi-Che was obviously dissatisfied with the information in his hands. It was too little. The two of them actually lived in such a small place? Hao Lianfei, the dignified director of the public relations department, was just for show. Had she sold the villa he gave her last year? 2. Transfer Hao Lianfei to Africa tomorrow to discuss a business deal. 2. Not Africa. Du Ju thought he had heard wrong. Point two. Chi-Che raised his eyebrows impatiently. Can I too? Yes. Of course you can. 2. Suddenly, Chi-Che's phone vibrated. There were very few people who would send him messages. After a casual glance, Chi-Che's face instantly turned green. Go to the Pearl on the Water, too. Yes, sir. 2. The Pearl on the Water was the most powerful club in the city. It was said that the secretive owner had a great background and was a well-known playboy in the capital. Point two. The Pearl on the Water was dimly lit at night and exuded luxury. Chi-Che put his hands in the pockets of his suit pants and walked straight through the gorgeous hall. Wherever he passed, everyone automatically made way for him. Point two. In the huge office on the 10th floor, Tang Yi looked at Chi-Che's tense, handsome face and smiled nastily. Ever since a male host who looked very similar to Chi-Che had been hired by his club, Chi-Che had never come again. Point two. Io, what wind blew our busy CO Chi here? 2. Chi-Che glanced at him unhappily. Don't act like a lapdog. If the Tang family's old man found out about this mischievous look, he would definitely be angered to death. Point two. Today is our little Ah-Che's first time serving a guest. Don't cause trouble. Tang Yi continued to stroke his tiger whiskers fearlessly. Point two. Don't you believe that I can tear down this lousy place of yours right now? 2. This was the first time Tang Yi had ever seen Chi-Che so brazenly threaten someone. He was shocked. I say, did you take the wrong medicine today? 2. They had grown up together, and he knew that Chi-Che was best at beating people behind their backs. He never lost face. Point two. That damn number 9 is in that room. He tugged at Tang Yi's checkered shirt, the impatience in his eyes becoming more obvious. Point two. 938, 2. Without waiting for anything more, Chi-Che walked out. Tang Yi followed behind him, flustered. Let me make it clear that you're not allowed to complain to the old man. 2. In room 938, more than a dozen people were gloating as they watched Su He's drunken antics. Point two. From time to time, someone would curl their lips in disdain. TSK. This alcohol tolerance is too embarrassing. 2. Su He sat on the sofa in a daze. Her pink cheeks were flushed red. With a face that resembled Ah-Che beside her, She couldn't bear to reject him, for fear of his sad expression. Point 2. I'm sorry, I can't drink anymore. She had always abstained from alcohol. Tonight, she had already made an exception. Even if the other party looked like Ache, she knew that it wasn't in. Point 2. Senior sister, don't let number 9 down. 2. Yes, hee. It's rare for everyone to gather together. Don't spoil the mood. Yin Chuqing encouraged her to take some more alcohol with a malicious smile. Point 2. She had already thought of a way to get Lung Yunfeng to drag Hao Yinfei along. She reckoned that it wouldn't last for long. She had to get number 9 to succeed as soon as possible. Point 2. Otherwise, if Che came early, everything wouldn't be fun anymore. Point 2. Su He shook her head in a daze. She felt that there were many double images in front of her. Her brain had almost lost the ability to think, and she didn't even notice that she was being carried out of the private room. Point 2. Where's Fei Fei? I want to look for Fei Fei. Su He waved her hand randomly. Point 2. Number 9, who looked 80% similar to Chi Che, revealed an evil smile. However, his frivolous expression was worlds apart from Chi Che's. Point 2. Be good. Fei Fei had something to do and left first. She left you with me to take care of. I'll send you home. 2. That heartless person. She brought me here and left me behind. Su He closed her heavy eyelids. Her entire body was helpless, held tightly in number 9's embrace. Point 2. The moment the private room door closed, number 9 nodded at Yin Chuqing and quickly walked into the elevator with Su He in his arms. The guest room was above the 10th floor of the Pearl on the water. At this time, room 1102 on the 11th floor had already been opened. Number 9 hurriedly kicked the door open. Point 2. He had seen many beautiful women. It was rare to see such a peerless beauty. Today, he was really lucky in love. Point 2. Suddenly, something ice-cold and metallic was pressed against the back of his head. Number 9 was so scared that he did not move at all. The only sound that could be heard in the pitch-black room was a click. Instantly, the lights turned bright. Point 2. CEO? CEO Chi. His trembling voice was so shaky that he could not even speak. A premonition of great disaster had caused number 9 to almost kneel on the ground. Point 2. Chi Che stood in front of him, a livid expression on his face. He pulled Su He away and punched number 9 with his right hand. The man was instantly out cold. Point 2. If that hand is on you, chop that hand off. A bone-chilling voice came from above. Point 2. Yes, sir. 2. Wait. Destroy his face while you're at it. 2. Yes, sir. He dared to endanger the person in the CEO's heart. He had been courting death. Point 2. After Du Ju dragged the man away, only Chi Che was left in the huge room, with the sleeping Su He in his arms. Point 2. Staring at the woman in front of him, who had been thinking about him, a hint of struggle appeared in Chi Che's eyes. Point 2. Don't even think about escaping when you come back. Point 2. The next day, Su He woke up with a severe headache. Everything from last night seemed to have happened 5 years ago. She originally thought it was a dream, but now it seemed that everything was real. Point 2. Feeling the steady breathing beside her, Su He unconsciously let out a satisfied smile. Point 2. Fu Mingyao must have gone mad with anger, right? Who knew how Fu Juanxing would torture her mother, too? She wasn't afraid of Fu Mingyao, but she couldn't ignore her mother. Thinking of this, Su He frowned deeply, got up in a sorry state, dressed, and left. Point 2. The crisp sound of the door closing was heard. Chi Che, who had been sleeping, suddenly opened his eyes. His sharp and clear expression didn't show the slightest bit of sleepiness. Point 2. He clenched his fists so tightly that his joints turned slightly white, and the anger in his eyes was almost burning. Su He, you're ruthless. You're really ruthless. You were like this 5 years ago, but you disappeared without a trace the next day. 5 years later, don't even think about it. This time, he would never let her go. Point 2. He was clearly extremely resentful, but he could not let it go, could not throw it away, and could not leave. Point 2. In front of the revolving door on the first floor, Su He happened to meet Du Ju, who was carrying a handbag. Point 2. Looking at Du Ju's ambiguous gaze, Su He cleared her throat awkwardly. Please don't mention meeting me here, Tawache. 2. Du Ju frowned in confusion. He looked at Su Hee and lowered his head to look at the beautifully wrapped bag in his hand. Should he remind Miss Su that the CEO had ordered him to go to the villa early in the morning and bring a whole set of women's clothes over? Thank you. Not wanting to delay any longer, Su Hee bowed and almost ran away. Point two. Shrugging his shoulders, Du Ju carried the bag to room 1102. He knocked on the door, but no one answered. With a gentle push, the half-closed door slowly opened. Arriving at the bedroom, Chi-Che was leaning against the headboard in a daze. His eyes were out of focus as he looked into the unknown distance, like a soulless puppet. Du Ju's heart was instantly lifted. The president was like this again. How could Su Hee be so ruthless? Have you found out? After a long time, Chi-Che's voice slowly came through. His hoarse voice carried deep fatigue, and his eyes were bloodshot. Point two. Du Ju's thick brows were tightly knitted. The president's appearance clearly showed that his eyes had been open all night. It's Yin Chuqing. 2. Chi-Che's lips curled into a cold smile. She's becoming more and more restless. 2. It's because you usually indulge her too much, Du Ju muttered in a low voice, as if he had been dissatisfied for a long time. Point two. Southeast Asia lacks a person in charge, so let Yin Chuqing go. She's not allowed to come back in the future. After saying this, Chi-Che closed his eyes slightly. His fan-like eyelashes cast a shadow on his face. Point two. After a long while, he didn't hear the sound of the door closing. Chi-Che opened his eyes impatiently and saw Du Ju standing by the bed with a conflicted expression. Point two. Speak to CEO. Du Ju organized his words in his mind and probed gently. What about Miss Su's side? Why don't we just snatch her back? 2. Are you two free? Chi-Che's voice became colder. Point two. Du Ju had followed him for so many years. How could he not understand his pain? He really didn't know what to be conflicted about. If you can't let it go, then snatch it back. Where did the president's iron-fisted methods go? After leaving the pearl on the water, Su Hee rested for 2 whole days before going out again. When she did, her chest throbbed with pain, but a brilliant smile blossomed on her lips. Point two. The autumn air was refreshing, and the sunlight outside was just right. Even the darkest corner of her heart could feel a trace of warmth. Point two. Stepping through the door of the affiliated university hospital, Su Hee looked at the busy crowd that came and went, and the smile on her face did not diminish. Even after leaving for 5 years, she had finally returned to the place where she had wanted to work the most when she was still a student. Point two. Before Hao Lianfei left, she had told her that senior he also worked here. To be honest, she had always resisted seeing He Fifan in her heart. Perhaps it was because He Fifan had always opposed her being with a Che back then. Point two. His objections had true, and she now felt a little embarrassed to face him. Point two. In the director's office on the 17th floor, the white-haired President Chung was laughing. His expression hadn't changed since the morning, and the handsome man in a white coat opposite him frowned. Point two. The hospital is about to be bought by Madman Chi, and you're still so happy? Ififan finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Point two. President Chung smiled with narrowed eyes and spoke with indifference. So be it. After saying that, he asked seriously again, I heard that Chi-Che has gone crazy? Do you want him to come to the hospital for treatment? After all, the two of you grew up together. You have to care about him more than another doctor. 2. He Fifan spat his mouthful of coffee across the room. He put down his cup, unsure whether to laugh or cry, and feigned seriousness. I may need patience, but I don't dare to treat the Chi family casually. I have to report this. Wasn't it crazy to spend such a huge amount of money to purchase the hospital? 2. Then report it to the higher-ups. 2. There was a crisp knock on the door, and simultaneously the administrative secretary's voice came from the intercom. President, Miss Su has arrived. 2. President Chung couldn't care less about He Fifan. Hurriedly, you want to pull the door open. Point 2. The door swung open, revealing Su Hee. She wore a simple flaxen-colored dress and a beige windbreaker. He stood in front of the door elegantly, and when she saw President Chung, she bowed deeply. Hello, President Chung. I'm sorry to trouble you. 2. She raised his head, and her gaze passed through President Cheng's and met He Fifin's eyes. The two of them were stunned at the same time. Point two. Hee hee, you're finally back. President Chung did not feel the frozen atmosphere at all. He enthusiastically pulled Su Hee Hee to the sofa and sat her down. Point two. You must be familiar with He Fifin. You're both from the university's medical school. He's now the director of our hospital's cardiothoracic surgery department and the youngest associate professor in the history of the university. You should familiarize yourself with him first. What do you think? 2. The more President Chung spoke, the more awkward she felt. Logically speaking, with Su Hee Hee's status, this should not be the arrangement. It was just that there was no suitable position for her right now, so this was all he could do for her. Point 2. Of course, no problem. Thank you, President Chung. Su Hee Hee smiled at President Chung before standing up and walking to He Fifin, politely extending her hand. I'll have to trouble Senior He to teach me more in the future. 2. He Fifin's face was filled with disdain, and a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. I don't have the qualifications to teach you, Beauty Su. With that, he turned around and left like a gust of wind. Point 2. Su Hee Hee was startled. She withdrew his hand that had been left hanging in the air and shook her head bitterly. Senior He's disgust towards her was still as direct as ever. Point 2. President Chang's face was filled with embarrassment. Hee hee, I'm sorry about Fifin's temper. Don't mind him. He's not good at talking, but he's actually a very nice person. 2. Very nice, thought Hee Hee, but only to Ache, right? President, since I'm only at the initial stage of familiarizing myself with my studies, I hope you can keep a secret for the time being. A large portion of my achievements in the United States are actually thanks to my mentor. 2. President Chung chuckled and hurriedly nodded his head. The more he looked at Su Hee Hee, the more satisfied he was. Why hadn't he noticed such a formidable medical genius back then? He could have benefited greatly. Point 2. He Fifin came out of the president's office. When he thought of Chi Che's abnormal acquisition, he almost went crazy with anger. He simply took off his white coat and rushed straight to the Zifeng building. Point 2. Outside the CEO's office on the 60th floor, Du Ju was holding a folder, waiting mountain-like in the middle of the corridor. Point 2. Where's Madman Chi? He Fifin rushed over like a gust of wind. Point 2. Du Ju was instantly dumbfounded. What was going on? One after another, Tang Yi had gone in, and now He Fifin followed closely behind. 2. He's discussing something with young Master Tang. 2. He Fifin raised his eyebrows in disdain. Other than picking up girls, when did Tang Yi, that stallion, learn how to talk about things? 2. Speaking of playing with young Master Tang, he did have a way about him. 2. In the office, Tang Yi was having a good time. When did that heartless Su Hee Hee come back? Does she have a son? I heard that the middle-aged, wealthy businessman she followed back then was extremely charming. Where does she live? Forget it. You must help me find her. 2. Originally, he had come to seek an explanation for number 9. After learning the truth from Du Ju, however, he had immediately changed his focus. Point 2. Each time Tang Yi asked a question, Chi Che's handsome face turned colder. His eyes were dark, and his responses were clipped. Point 2. A brother's wife can't be bullied. Back then, I was worried about you, so I held back and didn't dare to make a move. Now, I have complete confidence that I can snatch her back from that middle-aged, wealthy businessman and fight for your honor. 2. The fountain pen in Chi Che's hand almost snapped in two. His lips curled into a teasing smile. Very good. He'd already sent 2 away, so he didn't mind sending 1 more away. Point 2. Pa! He Fifin kicked open the door and entered. Tang Yi shouted proudly, Yo! What brings our great Dr. He here? Why does that King white-robed angel have such a devil-like expression? 2. Tang Yi's mouth wasn't cheap, Chi Che thought. If he wasn't careful, he could choke to death. Point 2. He Fifin turned a blind eye to Tang Yi's provocation. He walked straight to Che's desk and angrily scolded him. Chi Che, you disappoint me too much. You don't deserve Meng Yao. 2. Hey, I say, great Dr. He, did our Ache dig up your ancestral grave or steal your wife? Why are you so angry? Oh, it must be because you covet Ache's current girlfriend, so you randomly bite people, Tang Yi quipped. His motto was, I'm just a cheap mouth. I'll take the salt for myself. 2. Chi shook his head indifferently, his expression calm. It's just a hospital, just for fun, too. Fifin was so angry that he almost died. The place he worked so hard for was just for fun in his eyes, too. Suhihi came to work in our hospital. But you already knew that, right? 2. Hearing this, his ink-black eyes suddenly blossomed with a brilliant light. Chiche revealed his first smile in 2 days. 2. Tang Yi smacked his thigh and laughed wildly in satisfaction. I'm going to make a move. 2. Chiche scowled at him once more, before picking up the vibrating phone in his hand. 2. President, Miss Su has gone to the Sunset Lake Villa again. Du Ju couldn't come in, so he called as soon as he received the news. 2. The slender fingers holding the phone froze in midair. Chiche narrowed his eyes, and his entire body emitted a cold, harsh aura that kept others 1,000 miles away. 2. Tang Yi and Fifin looked at each other nervously. The situation wasn't good, so it was better to leave first. 2. Su Hihi had left after completing the entry procedures at the hospital. She would officially go to work tomorrow, so she'd wanted to deal with her mother's matters as soon as possible for the rest of the day. 2. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to wait any longer if this dragged on. 2. She rushed to the Sunset Lake Villa. Once again, it was the housekeeper who opened the door. She acted like a hostess, causing Su Hihi to turn her head in disgust. The pain in her chest became even worse. 2. If she could, she would never set foot in this place again. 2. In the villa's hall stood a middle-aged man dressed in a well-ironed suit, with eyes that were as sharp as lightning. He exuded the dignified and domineering aura of someone who had been in a position of power for a long time. 2. Fu Juanxing was the richest man in the city. He was a real estate tycoon. Even though he was already over 50 years old, due to the proper maintenance, he was still handsome and upright as when he was young. His charm hadn't decreased with the years. 2. Although the years had etched frost into his face, it also added to the charm of a mature man. 2. Fu Juanxing's many deeds were legendary. The most mysterious thing about him, however, was that he was never married. No one knew who the mother of his only daughter, Fu Mingyao, was. The media had searched for gossip for a long time, but in the end they had given up. 2. In short, a man who could do anything with a flip of his hand was a man that no one could afford to offend. Su Hihi wanted to hide far away, but in the end she had sadly found that she was only struggling in his palm. The pain only grew stronger. Watching Su Hihi approach, Fu Juanxing's eyes revealed a hint of viciousness. The bone-eating hatred made his chest throb with pain. The heart attack of many years ago could easily be recalled by a similar face. 2. Lung Chinga's face had been deeply etched into his bones and blood. He couldn't even restrain himself from seeing her daughter. 2. Su Hihi's existence was the ironclad proof that Lung Chinga had betrayed him, reminding him every moment. If it weren't for Lung Chinga's life, Su Hihi would have died many times. 2. Chairman, are you all right? The old butler seemed worried, looking at Su Hihi unkindly. 2. Lung Chinga's daughter wouldn't be a good person either. Mr. Fu, I want to see my mother. Su Hihi's voice was cold and hard, and her thick eyelashes hid all the emotions in her eyes. 2. Fu Juanxing was slightly surprised. The bastard who used to love to raise her head and fight with him had grown up and learned how to hide her emotions. 2. Good, very good. This way, he would feel more at ease when he calculated. It's too late today, too. Su Hihi suddenly raised her head. Her incomparably charming appearance caused Fu Juanxing to lose focus for a moment. 2. Don't forget what you promised me 5 years ago. I didn't. The famous Mr. Fu would go back on his word like this. 2. Speaking of 5 years ago, Su Hihi's face was dark and her lip wouldn't stop trembling. However, her gaze was persistent as she forced herself to use an overbearing tone to question him. I've already left Chiche, as per your request, and fulfilled Fu Mingyao's wish. Today is the day you fulfill your promise. 2. Fu Juanxing's expression was stormy as he sneered at her. Your wings have grown stronger. 2. Su Hihi staggered and almost fell down. She clenched her hands so tightly that a sharp pain came from her palms. Only then did she focus, resisting the urge to step forward and give him a slap. Point two. Fu Jianxing was a devil. He had imprisoned her mother for 20 years so that she could only grow up in an orphanage. The hatred between the Su and Fu families would never be resolved for the rest of his life. Point two. No matter what my mother did to you back then, 20 years of imprisonment is enough to offset the happiness that you ruined for both of us. Su He's voice was filled with despair. Her mother's life was gone. She had lost everything since she lost Che 5 years ago. In her lifetime, her only goal was to get her mother back. Point two. Fu Jianxing snorted coldly. It's still far from enough. Even if Lung Qinga dies, she must die by my side. 2. Su He's face instantly drained of blood. Point two. When she saw Su Qinga, tears streamed down her face. The smart, wise, gentle, and peerless mother that had lived in her memories was now so thin and weak that a gust of wind could blow her down. Point two. After 5 years, her mother was so haggard that it made He's heart ache. I'm sorry I came back late, too. He looked like Lung Qinga, despite their differences in temperament. He was charming, yet stubborn and unwilling to admit defeat. Lung Qinga was once a popular diva, and her temperament was gentle and refined. Every frown and smile was poised. Even though she was a husk of her former self, the light in her clear eyes was still dazzling. Point two. Many men had fallen under her spell, and Fu Jianxing had been her downfall. He was a hurdle that she could not overcome. They tortured each other deep into her bones, and the price was like blood, staining her life. Point two. Silly child, I've let you down. Lung Qinga's eyes were full of tears. She was so guilty that she almost did not dare to look into He's eyes. Point two. He shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She was useless. I will definitely save you. Please give me some time. She might not live for more than a year. With 1 year as the deadline, she was bound to personally take her mother away from here. Point two. Lung Qinga smiled calmly. It's no longer necessary for things to come to that point. Please don't hate me in the future, okay? 2. Lung Qinga's eyes were filled with despair. He was terrified. Why would I hate you? I love you more than anything. If it weren't for her mother's concern for her, she would have left long ago. Point two. A bad premonition made her panic to the point that she almost stopped. She clutched her chest in pain. How did it become so serious? Have you been taking care of yourself? Are you still in love with Che? 2. He shrugged awkwardly, caught between nodding and shaking her head. She carefully sidestepped the question. It doesn't matter. I was the one who gave up on him back then. 2. Fu Jianxing must have forced you. That bastard. Lung Qinga snorted through gritted teeth. Her voice unconsciously became sharp, and her eyes revealed a gleam of hatred. Point two. Fu Jianxing, she thought, He's pain will definitely be repaid in double in the future. He deserves a fate worse than death. Point two. Since you like him, then snatch him back from me. The Su family can't be so cowardly. The 20 years of imprisonment Fu Jianxing had inflicted could not erase her pride. Point two. He took a deep breath and slowly relaxed the hand that was holding her chest. No matter how painful it was, she did not want her mother to know and worry. Point two. I can't do that. She had already hurt Che once 5 years ago. She didn't want to hurt him again now. Point two. Miss Su, it's time for you to leave. Fu Jianxing reminded her with a cold face. Point two. Oh, I forgot this was a prison visit. Lung Qinga quipped with disdain. Point two. Fu Jianxing frowned deeply, but responded with gentleness. Qinga, you know it isn't. He hated her, but he also loved her more. He hurt her and doted on her, as if he was trapped in an endless cycle. Point two. True, it's even worse than a prison visit. How many times a year would she be permitted to visit a prison? 2. Fu Jianxing's expression changed drastically. He snorted and said impatiently, If you want to make everyone unhappy, you can continue to make trouble. 2. What does everyone have to do with me? 2. Then does Su He have nothing to do with you? Do you want her to become the second Su Huidong? 2. Fu Jianxing's brazen threat made Lung Qinga tremble. She turned around and glared at him. How dare you, too? You know I'll do it. In Chinga's heart, he was already beyond redemption, so he didn't care if she thought worse of him. Point two. Su He didn't want her mother to be put in a difficult position. The conversation between the two made it impossible for her to stay any longer. They said their goodbyes in a hurry. When she stepped out of the villa, it was dark outside, and it was already drizzling. Point two. A gust of autumn wind blew, and the chill invaded her body. Su He unconsciously hugged herself tightly, and a wave of dizziness hit her. Her body swayed for a long time before she regained her balance and quickly walked forward. Point two. Because she had been in there for too long, the taxi that had brought her was unwilling to wait. She would have to leave Sunset Lake on foot if she wanted to get a taxi to anywhere else. Point two. In the Bentley across the road, a pair of ink-black eyes were focused on the delicate person, and a trace of heartache flashed within them. Point two. The woman that he held in his hands and doted on had fallen to such a state. If she wasn't happy, why didn't she return to his side, too? Miss Su seems to be having a bad time. Du-ju in the driver's seat couldn't help but say. Point two. Chi-che raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly, indicating for him to continue speaking. President, I heard that the neighborhood where Miss Su lives is not ideal. There are a lot of third-rate bars and nightclubs around. Two. Chi-che snorted coldly. The range of what you've heard is very wide. Two. Du-ju grinned awkwardly and continued. If Miss Su wants to work under young Master He, she will definitely be bullied by him. Two. Chi-che nodded his head in a seemingly serious manner. His ink-black eyes stared at the woman by the roadside, unwilling to move an inch. I heard that Miss Su was timid in medical school back then and never participated in the experiments. With young Master He's strictness, he'll definitely drive her crazy. Two. Closing his eyes tiredly, Du-ju was the only person in the world who supported He. Point two. The rain became heavier and heavier. The icy cold water droplets were so heavy that it made it difficult for people to open their eyes. Su He's entire body was drenched. The bone-piercing cold made her face pale. Her feet felt as if they were heavy with mud, and it was difficult for her to walk. Point two. Get in the car. A voice filled with anger rang out behind her. He turned around in a daze. She came face to face with Chi-che, whose handsome eyes in the rain became increasingly cold and noble. Point two. She sighed, and her eyes were filled with despair. Point two. Chi-che felt as if his heart was tightly gripped by a pair of big hands. He was in so much pain that he cursed himself for being a bastard. Why did he have to refuse to lower his dignity for the sake of saving face? Point two. If something happened to He, how could he go on living? Two. He pulled her into his strong arms and carried her to the car. Du-ju quickly closed the car door and got into the front seat, starting the engine. Point two. Ache. Su He shook her head and smiled to herself. Are you here to send me off? She mumbled. It's a little early. There's still a year. I can still do many things in a year. Two. Chi-che's eyes were red. His arms were like iron as he held her tightly. Point two. She had longed for his warmth for a long time. How could she reject it? She was destined to sink into oblivion when she met Chi-che. Even if it meant that she would never be able to recover, it was worth it. Point two. Chi-che's hoarse voice echoed in her fair and delicate ears. In the future, no man is allowed to have you except for me. Two. He instantly sobered up and shivered. She timidly wanted to leave the embrace that she had longed for a long time. Point two. Chi-che's eyes were dark and cold. Do you think you can come and go as you please? Two. No. Su He shook her head and panted. Point two. Then explain. He had lied to her countless times. This was just a joke. He must have her own difficulties. In the end, it was just that he was too stupid. Even now, he still wanted to hear her say it to him personally. This isn't true. I've never betrayed you. I've always loved you, too. I'm sorry. He clutched the pendant hanging on her chest in pain. Waves of heart-wrenching pain tormented her until her vision turned black, and she almost fainted. Point two. Other than being sorry, she didn't know what to say. Let me out of the car. Let me out of the car. He struggled desperately. In front of Ache, she couldn't take the medicine in the pendant. Point two. Chi-che's expression was dark. The hands that were holding He loosened inch by inch, and he unconsciously revealed a pained expression. Would she rather be drenched in the rain than stay by his side? 2. The car stopped abruptly. Without waiting for it to stop fully, Soo-hee hurriedly pushed the door open and stepped out. Point 2. The car door closed. Chi-che closed his eyes in pain and leaned against the back of the chair tiredly. Du-ju, what do you think I should do with her, too? This, Du-ju had a troubled expression. The CEO had always been so strong and confident. When had he ever appeared so lonely and desperate? Soo-hee was really amazing. Point 2. President, Miss Sue fainted. Before Du-ju could finish speaking, the car door was forcefully pushed open. By the time Du-ju realized what had happened, Chi-che's figure had already disappeared. Point 2. The person in Chi-che's arms was so weak that it made his heart ache. He carried her back to the car, and they rushed from the shores of the Sunset Lake to Chi-che's private villa. Du-ju stepped on the accelerator all the way, but Chi-che still felt that his speed was too slow. Point 2. After Hee's clothes had been changed, Heefeefan arrived, carrying a medical kit. His expression was unsightly as he arrived late. Point 2. From the moment he received Du-ju's phone call, he had a bad premonition. There weren't many people who could make Ah-che so flustered. Point 2. When he saw Soo-hee in Chi-che's arms, his face was so dark that ink could almost drip out. I refused to treat a vixen, too. Chi-che grabbed Heefeefan's collar with great force and answered aggressively. If you want to die, then refuse. But before you refuse, you have to cure her first. 2. Heefeefan was stunned, shaking his head helplessly. Forget it. The brotherhood of more than 20 years was actually not comparable to a vixen. Why do you have to flatter himself? 2. She got caught in the rain, caught a cold, and had a fever. I'll give her a 4-drip first, but since her face is so ugly, I suggest we go to the hospital for a thorough checkup. 2. The barely conscious Hee grabbed the corner of Chi-che's shirt and refused to let go no matter what. Her eyebrows were furrowed, and even her eyes were powerless to open. Point 2. She doesn't want to go to the hospital. 2. Be sane. You're sick, so go to the hospital, okay? If you're afraid of pain, we won't give you an injection. Chi-che coaxed gently. He held Hee's small hand gently in his own, hoping to never let go. Point 2. Everyone around sucked in a breath of cold air. A few servants were so shocked that they almost dropped the hot water and towels in their hands. Heefeefan put it in 4-drip and picked up the medicine box. He didn't want to stay any longer. Point 2. Ah-che, can you not go? He shifted uneasily to Chi-che's side, touching his waist. A faint smile appeared on his face. Point 2. Chi-che's defeated chin rested on Hee's forehead. He thought, if you're having a bad time, come back. Come back to my side. As long as you're willing, I'll wait for you. Point 2. At night, Soo-hee would wake up from time to time, feeling faint kisses on her lips and skin. Point 2. Cold sweat drenched her clothes. In her half-asleep state, she felt someone gently helping her change into her pajamas. Their movements were gentle and patient, as if she was delicate porcelain that would break if they used too much strength. Point 2. A string of crystal-clear tears dripped from the corner of her eyes. She must be dreaming. Only the Che in her dreams would do this. In the darkness, Chi-che's eyes narrowed slightly. He gently raised his finger, touching the crystal tears as they slid down her cheeks. Through the orange light at the bedside, they emitted a heartbreaking glow. Point 2. His long finger was sent to his lips. A salty taste filled his mouth, echoing his mood. Point 2. What should he do with her? He couldn't wait. He couldn't love her. Point 2. The next day, Soo-hee woke up hungry. She stretched out her arm, and the empty space beside her was cold. It turned out that last night was really an illusion. Ah-che wasn't there at all. Point 2. After taking a deep breath, she got up and put on the clothes that were laid out. The strange environment, the strange room, the strange clothes. But the familiar smell in the room matched her memory. Soo-hee was shocked. Point 2. This was Ah-che's room? The young housekeeper pushed the door open and smiled politely at her with a look of worship. Hello, madam. I'm a housekeeper here. You can call me Aya. Breakfast is ready. 2. Ma, ma'am. Soo-hee was stunned. Do you have the wrong person? 2. Aya smiled and answered gently. It's just a title. It doesn't matter. Please follow me. 2. Ache. He was so embarrassed that she didn't know how to ask. She really hadn't expected to be brought back by Ache again after getting out of the car last night. Point 2. Mr. Chi is already in the living room, reading the documents. Oh, and your things have all been moved here and have been arranged for you. 2. Suhi felt that she couldn't keep up with Aya's pace. My things, too. That's right. You'll be staying here from now on, according to Special Assistant Du's instructions, Aya said matter-of-factly. This place has been empty for 5 years. I'm almost bored to death being the housekeeper here. 2. Suhi tucked her long curly hair behind her ears and immediately burst into laughter. Point 2. When she arrived in the living room, Chi-Che was holding a document in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. His expression was serious, and his thin lips were tightly pursed. Point 2. His entire body was bathed in the morning light, dazzling Hihi's eyes. Point 2. Drinking coffee on an empty stomach isn't good for you. He didn't know what was wrong, so she automatically said what he used to say to her. Point 2. Chi-Che raised his head with a slightly surprised expression. The rays of sunlight fell onto his thick eyelashes, just enough to cover the dark shadows under his eyes. Point 2. Aya secretly hid a smile. Mr. Chi had not slept the whole night, and he had gotten up too early in the morning. He had already drunk 3 cups of coffee since then, but she hadn't dared to remind him. It was still the new madam who was bold. Point 2. The atmosphere was somewhat frozen. He felt that she should say something. Suddenly, she thought of the luggage-moving incident that Aya had mentioned earlier. Ache, too. Chi-Che raised his eyebrows and motioned for her to continue. I have a place to stay. 2. He put down the document, and his lips curled into a cold smile. Don't worry, I won't stay here. 2. Hihi's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She didn't mean that. She didn't have the right to stay here. Point 2. I shouldn't be staying here. 2. Oh. Then who do you think is more suitable to stay here? Chi-Che was so angry that he laughed instead. Point 2. He could only make Ah-Che angry. She lowered her head and unconsciously took 2 steps back. Point 2. The anger in Chi-Che's eyes intensified. Was she really so afraid of him? 2. Meng Yao would be unhappy if she knew. Meng Yao was his fiancée, and he could only be considered an ex-girlfriend at the most. Chi-Che's fist smashed heavily onto the glass coffee table in front of him. Bright red blood dripped down from between his fingers. Point 2. He was shocked, her heart aching terribly. She ran forward a few steps, but her slender and delicate hand was forcefully stopped. Point 2. No, she couldn't. He turned her head away in discomfort, and the corners of her eyes were moist. Since she had already let go, she had to do it thoroughly. If she was entangled, she would only end up hurting even more people. Point 2. When you find a suitable place to stay, you can leave at any time. His voice was bone-chilling. Hihi's entire body trembled slightly. He stood and left the room, and she finally fell to the ground, as if Chi-Che's departure had taken away all of her strength. Io was immediately by her side, looking extremely anxious. Madam, hurry up and chase after him. As long as you chase after Mr. Chi, you'll definitely stay. 2. He looked out of the window in a daze as the Bentley sped past. So what if I stay for now? I can keep him, but I can never stay for good. 2. What do you mean? Aya asked, puzzled. Don't you love him too? Huh? She laughed self-deprecatingly. I can't give Ah-Che happiness. Meng Yao is the most suitable for him. If it weren't for Fu Juanxing's coercion, she might have stayed with Ah-Che for 5 more years. 5 years later, today, she would still make the same decision. Hurting him once was enough. Point 2. Mr. Chi will definitely be angry if he hears your words. What Mr. Chi wants may not be the most suitable. Perhaps he only wants you and not Miss Fu. She had never seen Mr. Chi so crazy, worried, anxious, and tender. This was a living person. In front of Miss Fu, Mr. Chi would always be indifferent and cold. Point 2. Aya's words made Su Hihi freeze in place. The watery light in her eyes was layered, filled with pain and despair. Point 2. She was not a weak person, but the remaining time pressed down on her until she could not breathe. A year was too short, so short that it was a flash in the pan. It could not make Ah-Che happy. Point 2. In the first floor hall of the Ziefing building, every passerby was careful, afraid of alerting the woman in the reception area. Point 2. When they heard that CEO Chi was in a bad mood, everyone suffered. The director of the public relations department, Hao Yinfei, who had always been favored the most, was temporarily transferred to Africa. What good was public relations in Africa? This was clearly the CEO's deliberate punishment. Point 2. If it was cruel enough for a beauty like Hao Yinfei to be transferred to Africa, then manager Yin, who had been guarding the first floor the whole time, was even more unlucky. It was said that she had been waiting here for a week just to see CEO Chi. Point 2. Yin Chuqing, who had once enjoyed boundless glory and dared to do whatever she wanted, had finally had her reckoning. Everyone was astounded. Point 2. What kind of mistake had she made that had caused President Xi to be so ruthless? Everyone was curious. They even did a secret survey in an effort to uncover the truth. Point 2. The moment Chi Che and Du Ju appeared in the hall, they immediately attracted everyone's attention. With a slight frown, Chi Che coldly gave orders. Deal with this matter immediately. He had only been gone for a week, and someone already had dared to defy him in public. Point 2. It looked like someone was asking for a beating again. Du Ju's lips twitched, and he hurriedly pressed the button for the executive elevator. Point 2. The elevator door closed, and Du Ju spoke. Manager Yin was left behind by Miss Fu. 2. Chi Che snorted. Get Luo Fan to see me. 2. Yes, sir. 2. In the president's office, Secretary Luo's heart was in a mess. Why weren't Manager Yan's matters arranged until now? A cold voice came from behind the expensive rosewood table. Point 2. It was Miss Fu's orders, 2. Then you can go to work at the Fu Corporation in the future. 2. Secretary Luo secretly balked. I'm sorry. I'll make the arrangements right away. 2. Go. 2. The update was sent, and the matter was settled. Point 2. Less than half an hour after Secretary Luo left, the crisp sound of high heels came from outside the door. Chi Che closed the laptop in front of him and spoke to Du Ju. Go out there. Tell her not to lose her head. 2. Du Ju's brow furrowed. Why was it up to him to deal with this? 2. But Miss Fu he faltered. What he meant was that Fu Mingyao was not easy to deal with. Because of her identity as the future young madam, however, it wasn't good to say it out loud. Point 2. Chi Che looked helpless. Tell her whatever you have to. 2. Okay. 2. As expected, Ache hadn't gone to the villa. He knew that he'd always been a man of his word. From her initial worry to her disappointment, she gradually accepted it. Her current plan was to settle down in her new job at the hospital as soon as possible, and then find a new place to stay. Point 2. Hello, Dr. Su. The doctor who passed by greeted her warmly. Su He responded to his greeting with a polite smile, despite them not having been introduced. From the cardiothoracic surgery department to the tea room, everyone here seemed to know her name. Point 2. Dr. Su, are you free after work? A thin man with a handsome face blocked her way. Point 2. He shook her head and laughed. This was already the 7th one today. She didn't want to bear the name of a vixen. She had always kept a low profile. Her face was plain, and her clothes were lazy. Still, nothing seemed to stop the suitors or the comments. Point 2. Look, the new vixen has even hooked up with Dr. Jiang. 2. Why would Dr. Jiang fall for such a person? 2. A hero can't resist a beauty. Maybe she has some tricks up her sleeve. 2. What's the point of being a doctor when you look like that? 2. Be careful. You have to keep an eye on your Dr. Li so that he won't be seduced away. 2. At the nurse's station not far away, there were more than a dozen young and beautiful nurses gathered around. Their whispers could be heard clearly. Point 2. He frowned slightly. Ever since she had come here, such rumors had been going on. She had heard whispers from time to time, but she didn't care. This wasn't the first time she'd been scolded in front of someone. It would be a lie to say that it didn't make her angry. Because of her mother, she hated being called a vixen the most. Point 2. Haven't you said enough? Shut up. Dr. Jiang shouted at the nurses angrily, eyes wide with rage. He was about to go forward and argue further, but he grabbed his wrist. Point 2. Forget it. She shook her head. Point 2. How can we let it go just like that? They judged us so harshly. Dr. Jiang was very confused. Point 2. So what? He had already scolded them. but nothing could shut everyone's mouth. Point two. I'm sorry, I've implicated you. Dr. Jiang held He's small hand, and his face was full of guilt. Point two. Let go of your perverted hands. A gloomy voice came from behind them. Dr. Jiang was shocked, but He was indifferent. She turned around, and when she saw the gloomy-looking Tang Yi, her face was full of smiles. It made her suddenly exude a glory that could not be looked at directly, as bright as the stars. Point two. Tang Yi had been her best friend in university. The two of them used to talk about everything. If it hadn't been for the relationship between him and Ache, she would have contacted him long ago. Point two. Tang Yi revealed his signature roguish smile and kept his calculating in his heart. What should he do if she was beautiful but heartless? It was too dangerous. No wonder Che couldn't let go. If it was him, he wouldn't let go even if he died. Point two. Tang Yi went up and embraced her warmly. He glanced over at Dr. Jiang, who was still standing there looking foolish. Tang Yi glared. Aren't you going to get lost? Two. He couldn't help but facepalm. How could she forget how shameless Tang Yi was? She scolded him. Young Master Tang, this is a civilized society. Can you not be so unreasonable? Two. I'm unreasonable. Tang Yi pointed at himself and almost laughed out of anger. If it was Ache, not only would he use his eyes to scare people, he would definitely be ruthless behind their backs. He was being fair and above board. Point two. Your Ache is far less refined. Two. He took a deep breath and lowered her head dejectedly. Ache is no longer mine. Her voice was very soft, but Tang Yi could hear it clearly. A trace of pity flashed across his eyes. Let's go. To celebrate your return, I've booked a seat in Caesar's palace. Two. I haven't gotten off work yet, too. Isn't it going to be soon? Speaking of which, what kind of lousy job is this? What's there to get into? If you can't do it, I'll support you. He pulled her away without giving any explanation. Point two. When the two figures disappeared into the corridor, the voices from a nurse's station rang out again. Point two. Compared to the mockery, disdain, and jealousy from before, there was also a hint of fear. Everyone in the city knew young Master Tang's name. Not even the mayor would dare to criticize him. Point two. He had been to Caesar's palace once before. It had been her birthday. Ache had pretended not to know and had disappeared since the morning. When she was about to cry from anger, Fei Fei had hurriedly dragged her to Caesar's palace. In front of the magnificent revolving door, a row of hostesses were singing happy birthday songs in unison. Point two. Ache had held an exquisite cake in his hands and walked slowly down the red carpet to meet her. He had looked so handsome. Point two. She remembered that she was crying so hard back then. Ache had hugged her and coaxed her for a long time before she recovered. Point two. It turned out that happiness had been so close to her. She had had it and lost it. Point two. You said that this is your happy place, but your happy place is really expensive, Tang Yi said, pretending to be relaxed. Point two. He couldn't help but laugh. Finally, she was amused. To you, young Master Tang, it's just a drop in the bucket. Two. You know your place, Tang Yi responded, smiling as he walked her through the revolving restaurant on the top floor. Point two. The two of them casually found a seat and sat down. Everyone here knew Tang Yi, and no one dared to reprimand him. Point two. Their gazes swept past the seats, and Su He was suddenly stunned. She stared unblinkingly at Chi Che and Fu Mingyao, who were sitting in the next booth. The two of them had an intimate aura. He couldn't tell what they were talking about, but Fu Mingyao appeared to be in high spirits. Point two. Meanwhile, Chi Che was lightly sipping the red wine in his glass. His eyes were deep, and his expression was focused. From time to time, he would murmur something, making Fu Mingyao smile like a flower blossoming. Point two. Bitterness filled He's heart. Point two. Yo, isn't this our first daughter? Tang Yi exclaimed loudly. In the quiet environment, many people were shocked by his sudden shout. Point two. Su He smiled helplessly. She really had to give in to him. He was a nouveau riche, yet he had to come to a Western restaurant. Point two. What brings our number one daughter here? The two of them came here to be romantic. Tang Yi didn't like Fu Mingyao, just like he Fifan didn't like Su He. He didn't bother to hide at. Point two. Didn't Shane ever come here? Of course, You have this expression because of him. It really makes me a little jealous. 2. Fu Mingyao looked at the two people who had appeared at the same time, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a smile. Su He. Oh, Su He, you really don't know how to behave, do you? Che didn't want you, so you immediately switched to young Master Tang's embrace point 2. Young Master Tang, did you really chase after the legendary campus belle? It was difficult to tell whether she was happy or angry from her playful tone point 2. Chi Che's fingers, holding his goblet, turned slightly white point 2. Tang Yi chuckled as he answered. Back then, you and I both hoped that Ah Che and He would break up. Now that the two of them have finally split, our chance has come. Do you want to celebrate? 2. Fu Mingyao's smile froze on her face, but she couldn't say anything to refute his remark. What Tang Yi had said was the truth. She glanced at Chi Che worriedly, only to see that his expression was still the same as before, as if he wasn't angry. She couldn't help but secretly heave a sigh of relief point 2. Since you want to celebrate, why don't we share a table? Chi Che suggested, with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes point 2. He's expression was awkward, but Tang Yi happily moved the two tables together. He and Fu Mingyao sat together on one side, while Chi Che and Tang Yi sat opposite point 2. Their eyes met, and there was an undercurrent of unbearable. Tang Yi took the menu and ordered the most expensive dishes. He raised her eyebrows as she watched from her side. Clearly, he was venting his anger point 2. 4 bottles of 82 presidential love. Thank you. Tang Yi passed the menu to the waiter and spoke without hesitation point 2. 4 bottles. The waiter seemed shocked point 2. Yes, it's President Chi's treat. If you can't finish it, I'll pack it up. Tang Yi smiled shamelessly point 2. He lowered her head, wishing she could drag him away. She was not as thick-skinned as he was. The 82 presidential love was expensive. He actually ordered 4 bottles to be packed, too. She couldn't stand it anymore, kicking Tang Yi a few times under the table to remind him to stop. He gave no response, however, his annoying smile remaining perfectly in place point 2. Congratulations on your relationship with young Master Tang. Fu Mingyao raised her glass, and a provocative smile hung on her lips point 2. Su He held her glass of orange juice with an indifferent expression. Miss Fu, you misunderstood. Young Master Tang and I have always been very good friends. 2. Is that so? Mingyao raised an eyebrow, and it was obvious that she did not believe her point 2. He pursed her red lips and nodded gently. Her long hair fell slightly in front of her face, drawing the eye and making her appear even more beautiful for a moment point 2. The eyes of the two men in front of her instantly darkened. Chi Che impatiently lit a cigarette and took a drag point 2. Fu Mingyao's eyes were filled with hatred. Su He had relied on this fox-like charm to seduce one man after another. Sooner or later, someone would scratch her pretty face point 2. The waiters served one dish after another. Filet mignon, black truffle foie gras, and fragrant vanilla baked snails. There were a variety of dishes, and before long, they filled the entire dining table. It did not seem like they were eating Western food. Instead, they looked like they were having a Han Dynasty feast point 2. The scattered guests around all cast curious and disdainful gazes. Even a rich person wouldn't eat Western food like this. According to me, this is how it should be. Drinking the red wine in his glass, Tang Yi was very satisfied with his masterpiece point 2. Fu Mingyao had a depressed look on her face. As the #1 daughter in the city, if today's events were to be spread out, she would definitely lose face point 2. Chi Che's expression was still the same as before. From the beginning to the end, he hadn't even looked at He. He was even elegantly tasting the steak in front of him. The medium-rare taste was fresh, tender, and juicy. It was very much to his liking point 2. Your favorite Boston prawns. Tang Yi offered them to her courteously, acting as if he was the host point 2. He felt that she would definitely suffocate to death if she had to stay at the table. She kicked him again, hard, before standing up and addressing the others. Enjoy your meal, everyone. I have something to attend to. I'll take my leave first. 2. Without waiting for their acknowledgement, She picked up his bag and left. Tang Yi threw down the knife and fork in his hands and hurriedly followed after her, a bottle of red wine in each of his hands. Point 2. Young Master Tang still likes to play tricks. Fu Mingyao teased. Point 2. Chi Che put down his knife and fork and raised his head to look at Fu Mingyao. Are you full, too? Yes. Fu Mingyao hesitated for a moment. What about Chu Qing, too? Let her continue working tomorrow, but remind her to keep her head when she acts in the future, too. Che, I love you. Fu Mingyao happily gave him a kiss and said softly in his ear, Che, I'll go to your place tonight, too. I still have something to do tonight, so forget it. I've arranged for someone to send you back. Chi Che pushed the chair away and left without a backward glance. Point 2. Fu Mingyao was left alone, gritting her teeth. Although Che still gave her whatever she wanted, she knew that he was becoming more and more impatient with her. If she didn't do something, she might really lose this war.